Recent political rhetoric has left many Americans believing that figures like Elon Musk, President Donald Trump, and the Republican Party have somehow opposed cancer research. Nothing could be further from the truth. Contrary to social media claims and partisan soundbites, Republicans have consistently supported funding for pediatric and other forms of cancer research, efforts that have historically received bipartisan backing. Meanwhile, the Biden administration, despite its cancer moonshot fanfare, has effectively shut down one of the most important cancer research initiatives in the world. This is the story that the media won't tell you. The inconvenient truth that just as significant scientific breakthroughs were emerging, the White House abruptly terminated critical research linking cell phone radiation to cancer. Let's set the record straight. Before diving into the more complex issue of cell phone radiation and cancer, let's clarify a critical point. Republicans have not slashed pediatric cancer research funding. In fact, the Republican-led House passed standalone legislation earlier this year that allocated $190 million for pediatric cancer research. This bill sailed through the House, only to languish in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Claims that Elon Musk or Donald Trump had anything to do with cutting this funding are patently false. To the contrary, Elon Musk has championed numerous philanthropic and tech-forward health initiatives, and Trump proudly signed the STAR Act during his presidency, the most comprehensive childhood cancer legislation ever introduced in Congress. These are hardly the actions of individuals opposed to finding a cure. The holdups in funding have resulted from political maneuvering in Washington, D.C. that occurred well after Republicans did their part. While the public's attention has been diverted by misinformation, a far more dangerous event took place in 2024. The National Toxicology Program, a premier U.S. research body, ended a groundbreaking decade-long investigation into whether everyday wireless radiation, such as that from cell phones, might cause cancer. This decision wasn't made by Elon Musk or Donald Trump. It was made under President Joe Biden. The timing is both tragic and ironic. The NTP had already found clear evidence linking prolonged RF radiation exposure to cancer in animal studies, notably glioblastoma, a lethal form of brain cancer. Even more tragic is the personal connection. Glioblastoma is the very cancer that took the life of President Biden's own son, Beau Biden. If the president had personal motivation to get to the bottom of RF radiation risks, he certainly didn't show it. Instead of supporting further research to confirm and expand upon these alarming findings, President Biden cut the funding. According to NTP insiders, the White House redirected money that was intended for continued cancer research into foreign aid. In other words, research that could potentially save American lives was sacrificed, leaving families and children vulnerable. Cell phone usage isn't slowing down. Children across America use smartphones, tablets, and wireless devices daily. Schools nationwide employ wireless networks, leaving young, developing brains and bodies constantly bathed in low-level RF radiation. Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, passed in the Clinton era, unconstitutionally restricts local governments from regulating cell tower placement based on health or environmental concerns. This leaves communities powerless to protect children, even if emerging science flags these technologies as harmful. The NTP's terminated research was a beacon of hope. Its findings challenged long-standing FCC guidelines on RF radiation that haven't been updated since 1996. Over the last 20 years, thousands of studies have shown potential health risks from RF radiation, not just related to cancer, but also reproductive health, neurological function, and more. The biggest and most rigorous findings have emerged in the last decade, underscoring the urgent need for further investigation, not abandonment. For decades, industry and regulators have dismissed RF radiation's non-thermal effects, biological changes at exposure levels too low to cause tissue heating. But recent studies and FDA-approved technologies like Therabionic, which uses RF radiation at far lower power levels than cell phones to treat liver cancer, prove that non-thermal bioelectrical interactions are real. These interactions could damage cancer cells, disrupt cellular signaling, and even modulate the immune system. If RF can be therapeutic in targeted cases, it can also be harmful under uncontrolled, chronic exposures. This knowledge calls for a thorough re-examination of the FCC's outdated standards. Our current guidelines do not account for non-thermal effects. With billions of cell phone users worldwide, ignoring these potential risks is reckless. Continuing the NTP's research could have illuminated how everyday technology influences our health and how to make it safer. Tragic high-profile cases: McCain, Kennedy, and Beau Biden. The worry over wireless radiation is not abstract. High-profile glioblastoma deaths, such as Senators John McCain and Edward Kennedy and Beau Biden, mirror the type of tumors identified in NTP's animal studies. McCain and Kennedy both succumbed to GBM, dying on the same date 9 years apart. Beau Biden also died from GBM, and he, like Kennedy, reportedly held his phone on the same side of his head where the tumor formed. Whether or not these cases definitively link to RF radiation, the coincidences demand investigation, not silence. In 2018, 2 landmark studies, the NTP's own near-field exposure research in the US and the Ramazzini Institute's far-field exposure studies in Italy, found that RF radiation promotes the development of certain tumors. These tumors occurred in the very cell types prone to gliomas, the hallmark of GBM. Meanwhile, global data reveals a steady rise in GBM rates over the past 2 decades, particularly in frontal and temporal lobes, exactly where one would suspect cell phone radiation exposure to have its greatest impact. Biden's redirected funds, a dangerous betrayal of public health. In a puzzling turn of events, President Biden not only neglected to boost cancer research, but actively stopped the NTP from continuing its vital work. While he touts his cancer moonshot and announces $150 million in grants, far less than what we stand to lose from halting the NTP program, he is simultaneously dismantling the very research that found a proven link to a known carcinogen. These actions leave us dangerously uninformed. Without NTP's ongoing studies, we lose the chance to understand how wireless radiation affects human health, and more importantly, how to prevent or minimize its cancer-causing potential. A call to action. Time to restore research and update safety guidelines. We, the voters and citizens, must demand better. We need to restore NTP funding immediately and push for an urgent update to the FCC's safety guidelines. This is not a political issue. It's a public health crisis. Regardless of party affiliation, our leaders must be held accountable for decisions that prioritize foreign policy maneuvers or industry profit over American lives. Contact your representatives and demand the following: restore NTP funding. The critical research that President Biden halted must resume, allowing scientists to confirm the risks and guide protective measures. Update FCC safety guidelines. Safety standards from 1996 cannot possibly reflect our understanding in 2024. The FCC must consider non-thermal effects and err on the side of caution. Empower local communities. Repeal or reform. Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act, giving local governments a say in cell tower placement to protect their children. Practice precautionary measures. Until guidelines catch up with science, minimize wireless radiation exposure by using hands-free devices, limiting call durations, and keeping devices away from your head and body. Conclusion: truth and accountability. The narrative that Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Republicans have slashed pediatric or broader cancer research funding is simply not true. The real villain is the current administration's choice to halt critical research that had already yielded alarming findings. America deserves the truth, and we deserve leaders who will not abandon vital scientific endeavors. What is at stake is not just a policy debate. It's our health, the safety of our children, and the future of public health research. The time has come to set the record straight, restore funding to the National Toxicology Program, and ensure that our safety guidelines reflect the latest science. Only by doing so can we truly put American health first and safeguard future generations from preventable cancers. Your voice matters. Contact your candidates, speak out in your communities, and join this urgent fight to restore NTP funding and update FCC guidelines. Let's work together to ensure that the health of the American people is never again sacrificed in silence. Visit RF Safe to learn more.